Hi! Lovely to be out here, oneness of all wings, standing in my front garden. It's a bit noisy, the building site next door is scaring into it because the new year has well and truly started. I'm just going to show you the garden and then we'll go inside and I'll tell you what I've been doing this week for God of me. Turning my head inside out, learning new things, which actually I'm really enjoying. So here we go. The first thing I'm seeing is the dahlias. And there's always, I just saw a bumblebee somewhere, there's always bees. There we go. We'll just follow this bumblebee for a bit. Fresh flowers, slightly munched flowers. And I never get tired of just watching them at work. Look at that. There's a lot of pollen in the centre, so that's what they collect, just the pollen. It's just nice to be out here, even with the building noise. I appreciate all of it. Oh look, this one's a proper double. Very bright and fresh. And there's more of them over here. And it's, you know, it's truly summer now, so everything's starting to dry out. And this is the last of the golden fever few. Getting really close to the last of the flowers. And I'm still really just enjoying this fuchsia. I know I do it every week, but it's just gorgeous. And we have some silence for a little while, so that's nice. And look, we've got some coriander. That's just flowering. And we've got this wonderful, here we go. There's something flying in there. It's too fast for me to follow. But I'm just enjoying the flowers and the foliage and the coriander. What else can I show you? I mean, it's the time of year when there is less going on. That's going to happen. This flower's pretty full and fabulous. This is Lotus Lake. It's a pelargonium. Then it just keeps going. And my fabulous thing, whose name I can't remember, but Google Lens knows. So, you know, there's in the apple tree, the neighbour's apple tree, which has sort of got long and leggy. And I'm going to show you this because I actually really enjoy long grass. And it's not, I could have mowed the lawns, or actually I wouldn't mow them, I would just cut the tops off with the weed eater. But I actually want this grass to run to seed. Because those of you who've been watching these videos for a few years will know that there used to be a garden bed in here. And I took it out a couple of years ago. Hi Selena! This is my wild front garden. And I took this, there was a bed running directly away from me in a line, and I actually want the grass to run to seed because I want more grass in there. When it's winter, it tends to be not enough grass and a lot of other stuff, so that is what I'm doing. Oh, and I nearly forgot to show you the flowers here. Look at the Luculia. It's so beautiful, smells really nice, and just got to watch where I put my feet here. But it's just coming out. I'm just going to walk straight into the garden and show you. Here's a big old flower head. Not old. It's beautiful. Whoops, it's not focusing. There we are. Just so many lovely flowers and they smell really, really good. So it's lovely to have that come up. And the neighbour's hydrangeas are actually pretty nice. And they look really good next to these beautiful red fuchsia flowers. I got them everywhere. So, oh, and look, we have an early anemone. They come out in autumn. Well, they come out in summer as long as there's enough water. And I really enjoy the foliage. This is a thing that I hack down every few years and it just comes back up like a mad thing and grows. And, oh, I mean, look at that. I just love being able to look up through the leaves and see the sun and the sky and everything. So this is a little bit of my mad summer garden. It's a garden, it always needs work, and there's a big old mulching pile there. That's later on. It's got to all dry out. But that's what I'm doing. So, now we're going to go inside and I'll tell you what I've been writing about today. Because every Wednesday morning, it's probably Tuesday for you if you're not in New Zealand or Australia or perhaps Asia. Every Wednesday morning, I sit down in front of my computer. I do longer work days on other days so that I can do this, and I write because I have this thing that I'm doing. I'm creating information Well, I'm downloading, I'm writing information about what I've learned about really how you can change your life. Hi, Mike. Great to see you. Yay! It is about changing your life. Excuse me, I've got this little standy thing on my phone and I forgot to pull it out before I started. It is about changing your life. And, you know, people want to create stuff. Some people want to create a relationship. Some people want to create money. Some people want to create a new job, or they want to live in a new place or something. And, you know, you hear people talk about manifestation, and you think, well, what the hell is that and how does it work? And that was exactly what I was always asking. And you hear people saying, oh, you got to think positively and you got to focus on the thing that you want and never think about anything else and all of that. And I couldn't do that. And I didn't understand why. And I just didn't understand why. And really it was because I didn't know how. I didn't understand a whole lot of stuff about how life works or about how anything works. And what I've been writing about for the last, 6 months or however long it is actually about if we really can make matter come out of nowhere with our mind, how do you do that? Because apparently you can, because people do it. I mean, you hear about people manifesting stuff that they wanted in their life. And if they can do it, surely I can do it. And why can't I? And what's the deal? And one of the things that's really helped me get my head and heart around this is actually grasping just a little bit, and I mean a little bit, what matter actually is. Because most of us think, well, matter's something solid, or it's liquid, or it's gas, but, you know, there's actually 4 states of matter, and most of us don't know that. There's a 4th one called plasma. Turns out that's really important. But what is matter? What's it made of? Because I always felt, you know, you're supposed to imagine it like if you have a sickness in your body and you want to change that. You're supposed to imagine it different. And somehow my brain would always balk and say, but how does that make any difference? Like, I'm just going, I'm imagining that it's different. It just felt like nothing. It felt like throwing water on a mountain and expecting it to dissolve. It was, you know. And so, turns out there's a guy who for about 32 years ago, at least 32 years ago, started asking much deeper questions about that when he was much younger than me. And his name is Nassim Haramein, and he is a physicist and a biologist and an anthropologist and all sorts of things. And I've been studying his work for a while and wrapping my head and heart around it. And it's very physical, it's very practical, this is how things actually work, folks. Because he just found himself asking those kinds of questions, and there came a point when he just had to do the study and the learning and figure it out. And he has figured out some really interesting things, and he's very fast to say he's not done anything on his own, and he's you know, he refers to this work and this work and this work, but the paper that he and his team pre-published at the end of 2022 is, the last time I looked, had been downloaded by 61,000 people. No one has been able to floor the mathematics in it, and the mathematics in it actually does explain what matter is and how it comes out of nowhere. Now that I'm interested in, particularly because if matter can be shown, well, this is how it comes out of nowhere, very practical. I mean, you know, you see fancy formula in your mind and think, oh God, this must be complicated. And the funny thing is, and this is something that Nassim Haramein is actually very determined about, he says that if you're doing physics, it has to, whatever maths you're writing, has to actually be about something that's real, that you can think about, that actually makes sense in terms of the physical world. And so while I'm not a physicist or a mathematician, and yeah, I did math when I was into age 17 and was pretty good at it, I don't understand the math that I'm seeing. You know, I might one day study so I can understand the math because I'm curious and interested. But I can understand the concepts because he always makes it something that relates to things that are actually real, because what he's discovered is that there's kind of a fundamental pattern and order to the universe that we're all in, and matter that we're all made of, and everything around us is made of, and everything that also that's not around us is made of, he's figured out what that is and how matter relates to gravity, and how, the physicists have this big problem where when you have an atom, you've got its nucleus, and there is a really, really, really strong force that holds that nucleus together, because it should, by logic, it should fly apart, and yet it doesn't. So how does that containment force happen? And then you've got gravity, and it's really weak. And there's just these different forces, and they've been trying to figure them out. Hi, Raja Sankar, great to see you. They've been trying to put pieces together, and it didn't make sense. And he's actually found, he and his team have worked out how it fits together, and the mathematics does that. And so when I'm thinking, okay, so this is how matter is actually, it's what it's made of and how it comes together. And how it comes together is that, the empty space, the void, everything, there's the universe. And if you take everything that you can measure, everything that you can observe, everything you can see, and everything you can't see, but still it's some kind of thing. Hi, Teresa. It's a wave that you can measure with some kind of thing, or even that you just know, you extrapolate that it's there. If you take all of that stuff that is something and you wrap it up, put in a ball over here, what you're left with is apparently empty space. And the thing is that empty space is not empty. It is totally full of the same stuff that matter is made of. This is what this math shows. This is what this physics shows. And the math is borne out by experiments. Like, the experimental proof is there. It's not just great theories. It actually matches what they're doing in the lab. And I like that, because I like it when philosophy and science and spirituality and all that stuff join hands, because that makes sense to me. And that's why I love the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I practice that every day, because I understand the science and the philosophy and the spirituality that all blend together to make it really real and effective. And, the science shows that it works. It should work. This is something that I said to my understanding of God when I was 21 and I was facing a big decision in my life. I should be able to take truth, kick it from here to the moon and back, and it should survive that, because if it's truth, it's truth. And if it doesn't survive truth, well, then it's bullshit, and I want nothing to do with it. And that was how I felt about religion too. And back then, I kicked everything around very hard, and what happened was that all the labels fell off, but God was still real. I just wasn't in any religious box back then. God is still extremely real to me. I just don't tend to use that word anymore. I use the void, the source, the unified field. But it's all the same thing. It's different words. So, I digress. So, the point being that I have been putting this model together in my own mind of the fact that there's this pattern that informs this stuff, that everything that we see and everything that we can't see, everything that is and everything that isn't, it's all made of the same stuff. And the only difference, fundamentally, the only difference between matter that we can see and measure and experience and stuff that we can't, is that the matter has somehow these little fundamental tiny particles of electrostatic energy that's spinning have gotten organized into something. Because it's the same as when you have gas, like if you have steam, we all know that's little particles of water and they've got hot, so they're broken away from the liquid water and now they're in a gas form, that's steam. If the steam cools down, it turns back into water again, it slows down and it becomes more organized, and those little water molecules that just had to be steam because they were so energized, when they cool down, they condense back into that water, that liquid again, they hold hands again, they make bonds between those molecules and make a liquid because they got less energy. And then if that energy gets cold enough, well, then you get even more bonds between the water molecules. And more than that, there's a fundamental pattern that begins to form, because ice is a crystal structure, and it makes a very specific pattern. It's like there is this intrinsic information in the molecule, and of course it's tetrahedral, so it's going to stick together in certain forms, which it's just what it is. And so it makes these crystals, and we recognize them as ice. Well, what if the quantum vacuum behaves in exactly the same way? What if there are these little, they're like water molecules, but they're whizzing around all on their own. And if something makes them get organized, slow down, they got to lose a bit of energy, and they got to slow down enough. First of all, if you like to join hands, go from steam to being liquid, oh no, we've got something that we can pour. But if they lose a bit more energy, now it freezes into something that's solid. It's become matter that we recognize, oh, here's a block of ice. Never mind that your hands will melt it. Well, this is my understanding of what's actually happening here on our planet and in our universe. And it's also the reason why, you look at a spiral galaxy, you look at water spinning in a glass, you look at a tornado, you look at the pattern. If you've ever seen a schematic of it, the sun is traveling around, it's making a circle in our spiral galaxy. And as it goes along, the Earth and the other 9 planets, 8 plus Pluto, whatever that is, are orbiting the sun, but they actually make spirals. As the sun moves along, it's a spiral, and it makes a spiral pattern. And then, the same thing with the moon, it's also making patterns. But everything is spiraling, everything is spinning. And you see it in plants, and you see it in the sea, you see it everywhere. Like trees, the shape of a tree's branches in our lungs, the patterns are the same. There is fundamental patterns everywhere. And maybe the reason why these fundamental patterns are everywhere is because there's a fundamental pattern in everything. And when this fundamental stuff that makes up everything slows down and makes matter, you get these different patterns. It just depends on which part of the overall, there's this information set. And it depends on which part of that information set actually informs the pattern. So that's not what I was writing about today either, but this is so big that it's really hard to just go, oh, it's like this. So I have to kind of talk around it and try to pull things together. So the stuff that we don't see and the stuff that's in the empty space gets organized by information. And the point that I am slowly, laboriously getting to, because I do not want to make shit up. I actually want to be speaking on the basis of something that I've learned, and not just, oh, well, that'll do, but actually, I believe that. I'll stand on that. I will live by that. I can meditate on that, and I find that it feels and works truly for me. And this is the thing, the stuff that I'm learning. When I go into the unified field and I'm creating change for myself, I'm going into the matter of my body, or the cymatic, and we're talking about cymatics in a minute, the cymatic of the resonance that is me, that is throughout the entire universe, the downward causation of which is this, right? I've got an information packet that's in the universe, and that information packet creates this body. It's not this body creates that resonance. That resonance creates me. You got one too. This is how I know it to be true. Okay, that's just my knowing. You're welcome to disagree. That's cool. So there's information. There are standing waves, and I talked about standing waves. I know I got on about them, but it made such an impression on me. I was 15 or 16 in this science experiment that just completely captured my attention, about just a plate of water or a tray of water, and and two fingers in it that dipped up and down, and they made this interference pattern, and I'd never seen one like that before. And realizing that with all of the waves and information that's going through our universe, because remember, everything that spins sends out information. It vibrates, it resonates. If there's a spin, there's a frequency, and then there's a wave, and then there's information. I'll just say that. And there are lots and lots of things that are spinning and resonating at different speeds and different ways in our universe. So imagine how many waves there are in the unified field and how they could add up together. And you could get interference patterns, and maybe matter is like interference patterns. And that was a brain explosion when I thought about that. And then listening to Nassim Haramein, realizing that what if the void, the vacuum fluctuations, the Planck spherical units, these tiny little pieces of spinning energy that are huge, it's huge energy in a very small space, what if they can be like a school of fish or a flock of birds, and they're all moving as one, even though it's all these little tiny pieces? And that's the only difference between whether we see matter or whether we don't. And all of this I know I've said before.
But I'm getting clearer because I wanted to make a link between interference pattern with water, right? Well, that's two-dimensional. But now I'm talking about things that spin and put out energy and put out waves and put out information. And I didn't have a good connection between that. I have to be able to see this like a chain of pearls or a string of pearls. It's got to all connect. And I was thinking, well, how do what? And then I realized, the next thing I have to write about is cymatics. And I've spent some time, and this whole thing of quantum spin, I actually spent some time researching that, and I had a download in my meditation this morning or yesterday. I cannot even remember. It's like, I get it. Because all of these things are like little toroids. A torus is like a donut. Like if you take a circle and you spin it around something, you imagine that circle's going to go around. It's going to make a donut shape. And if there's no space between the inside of the donut and the center, you'll get a sphere, basically. So we're all familiar with the sphere that spins around its axis. You just imagine a basketball player spinning a ball on their finger. Well, that's a sphere, and it's going around its own axis. Cool. But I listened to this video, and it said, spin's about more than that, and then they started doing complicated math, and I got confused because I don't have time to learn it. But then I sort of realized, but hang on, because I did a little more reading. So you get spin, that angular momentum it's called, around the own axis. But, you also have something can be spinning around something else. So like electrons will spin around a proton. That's what they do, around a nucleus, I beg your pardon. Electrons are spinning around the nucleus of an atom. And that's called orbital spin. Who knew? And then I've got to do some more research, but it occurred to me that you can have a sphere that is spinning on its own axis, and it could be spinning on its own axis and going around a point in space, just like our Earth goes around the sun. And then, the Earth, it's tilted, right? And remember we had that huge earthquake in 2004 with that Indonesian tsunami with 400,000 people died? Well, the Earth's axis moved. So even while the Earth is spinning on its own axis and it's going around the sun, at the same time, that axis that the Earth is spinning around can also move. And have you ever seen a top when it starts by spinning really straight, but then it starts to wobble? And that wobble is on its own a spin. So there's spins upon spins upon spins upon spins upon spins, and it gets really mind-bending. But I realised, that's what it means, because it's a three-dimensional sphere and it's spinning, so it can do all of those things at once. Now, I haven't written about that yet, but that's just a thing that another thing that collapsed into sort of, I get it in my mind. Everything is spinning in the universe, for sure. And so that's another piece that's fallen in place. And the thing I now need to write about is cymatics, because the point is that if the Planck plasma, which is what it is, can be spun, if you like, into a vortex, like you're saying, Mike, like you have a column of air and water and whatever else, and it makes a tornado. If the Planck plasma can get organized like that ice, and like the water, like the steam becomes water and then becomes ice, what if the Planck plasma, which is so highly energized that we've got no receptors for something that's that small and that highly energized, but if it can lose some energy and it slows down to become a proton, and it loses some more energy and gets more together and becomes an atom, and more together and makes molecules, and is that where matter comes from space? And I believe it does. But what makes that happen is standing waves, is something that's taking the 60,000 starlings and making them go into one organism. It's something that's saying, hey, Planck plasma, get organised and form into something, which I think is that universal intelligence of which you and I are each an expression. And because we have this free will and this volition, even though I am this cymatic, and I keep talking about cymatics, a cymatic, if you take a speaker and you fill it, you put a thing on it, and you fill it with oil and you turn on the speaker, if you hit the right frequency, you get these patterns. Well, that's how I feel that my body and every piece of matter in the universe something is vibrating that plasma because it behaves like a fluid. And that's why you look at a neural net in the brain and you look at these enormous nebulas and the galaxies in the universe, and they look exactly the same, except the pattern's the same. And so that overall pattern is there, and it's just finding all these different ways to express itself, and it's self-evolving, it's self-aware, and it's constantly learning, and we're part of that feedback. We're part of the feedback. It says, hey, this works and that doesn't, and it just keeps on going. And it keeps on evolving, and things get more and more complex, and as they get more complex, well, they eventually become self-aware, and then they evolve, and on it goes. And when a child is small, it makes simple things. It grows up, it learns more, it makes more complicated things, and then it creates something entirely new. Invents a new science or a new kind of art. It's this self-evolving intelligence that just keeps on doing that. And so, because we are part of that, and we have the ability to change our cymatic and therefore change our lives, the next big question is, how do I actually do that? And that's why I'm now going to start talking about what cymatics is. Because most people like me, the first time they hear that word, say, I don't know what that means. Which means, well, I need to explain it. So, and I found some really cool YouTube videos. There's a guy called Nigel Stanford. If you want to go look him up, you may have already seen it, not known that that's what this is. He tinkers with music and machines and automation and all kinds of stuff. And he did this really cool music where the whole thing, like the video, was about cymatics. And so there's 5 or 6 different things where the sound makes these really cool visuals. And if you just look up Nigel Stanford, music meets sound on YouTube, you should find the video. It's this 5 or 6 minute video with all these really cool things that are done with cymatics, showing how sound shapes matter. Well, sound is frequency and vibration and information, and you and I have the capacity to make frequency and information too, and literally shape the field with it. That's how manifestation works. I haven't told you anything about the how to, but that's literally how it works. And it doesn't matter whether you do it with positive thinking or meditation or prayer or whatever it is you do. If you study what is actually happening when people do that, you find out that there are some base principles that they're all doing the same stuff. And many people are teaching it many different ways. And I'm not even teaching a how to yet. I'm just building a model for myself out of all the stuff that I've learned, because I want to make this information just a little bit more accessible to people. Never mind what you do with it. That's another thing later. So that's my rave this week. Thanks for joining with me. I so enjoy this. I don't know where it's going to lead, but that's the unknown. Big love. I will see you next week with more. Until then, keep on creating. And I will too. Bye-bye.